Hey guys, this is day 9 of my 12 Days of Christmas tutorial series. I'm really excited to share this one with you. Today I will show you how to make a large macrame Christmas tree. Kits to create this tree are available in my Etsy shop if interested that will provide you with all the materials required for this project. Let's get started. The full piece from the very top to the bottom is approximately 30 inches in length and 8 inches wide. Please see the description for a link to learn how to make the macrame star at the top of this tree, or you can choose to create the tree just using a metal ring without the star. For your setup, cut 20 pieces of rope of varying lengths. Cut 2 pieces 10 feet each, 4 pieces 8 feet each, 6 pieces 6 feet each, 8 pieces 5 feet each. We will use the longest pieces first and the shortest pieces last. For the entire project, we will tie left-facing square knots. To make this pattern as clear as possible, I will outline the instructions in rows of square knots. For written instructions, please see the description. Attach your two 10-foot pieces of string to your ring using the method I have here. I'm threading the string through the back of the cowhitch knots. Row 1. Using the back 2 cords, tie a square knot around the front 2 cords. Row 2. Fold 2 of the 8-foot pieces of rope in half and attach to your tree using square knots. Every time I attach a piece of rope to the tree, I will fold it in half to find the center and then attach it. Row 3. Tie 1 square knot with the 4 middle strands. Row 4. Tie 1 square knot on the right and 1 on the left. Row 5. Tie 1 square knot in the middle of your work. Attach 2 8-foot pieces of rope on the left and on the right sides of your tree using square knots. Row 6. Tie 2 square knots in the middle of your work. Attach one bead to the second cord from the left. Tie a square knot underneath it. This will count as row 7. Attach one bead to the second cord from the right. Tie a square knot underneath it. This will count as row 7. Add a bead to the 2 middle cords to finish off row 7. Row 8. Attach one 6-foot piece of rope on the left side of your tree using a square knot. Tie 2 more square knots in the middle of your work. Attach another 6-foot piece of rope on the right side using a square knot. Row 9. Attach one bead to the second cord from the left. Tie one square knot to the right of the bead. Attach another bead to the 2 middle cords. Tie another square knot on the right side of the bead. Attach one more bead to the second cord from the right. Row 10. Tie 4 square knots. Continue to repeat this pattern on the sides of your work every 3 rows. Attach a piece of rope using a square knot, attach a bead to the second cord from the right and left, tie a square knot underneath the bead. The middle section will change up a bit, so I will continue to direct you through that section. Row 11. Attach 2 6-foot pieces on the right and left. Tie 3 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 12. Attach one bead on the left and one on the right. Tie 4 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 13. Tie 2 square knots on the left. Add one bead to the 2 middle strands. Tie 2 square knots on the right. Row 14. Attach 2 6-foot pieces on the right and left. Tie 4 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 15. Add a bead on the left, then tie a square knot. Skip 1 cord, then add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip a cord, and tie a square knot. Skip 1 cord, then add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip a cord, and tie a square knot. Add a bead on the right. Row 16, tie 6 square knots. Row 17, attach 2 5-foot pieces on the right and left. Tie 5 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 18, attach a bead on the left, tie 6 square knots, attach a bead on the right. Row 19, tie 2 square knots. Skip 1 cord and add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip 1 cord and tie 1 square knot. Skip 1 cord and add 1 bead to the next 2 strands, skip 1 cord and tie 2 square knots. Row 20. Attach 2 5-foot pieces on the right and left. Tie 6 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 21. Attach 1 bead on the left, tie 7 square knots, attach 1 bead on the right. Row 22. Tie 2 square knots. Skip 1 cord and add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip 1 cord and tie 2 square knots. Skip 1 cord and add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip 1 cord and tie 2 square knots. Row 23. Attach 2 5-foot pieces on the right and left. Tie 7 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 24. Attach a bead on the left, tie 8 square knots in the middle of your work, attach a bead on the right. Row 25. Tie 2 square knots. Skip 1 cord and add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip 1 cord and tie 3 square knots. Skip 1 cord and add a bead to the next 2 strands, skip 1 cord and tie 2 square knots. Row 26. Attach 2 5-foot pieces on the right and left. Tie 8 square knots in the middle of your work. Row 27. Attach a bead on the left, the right, and in the middle. There should be 4 square knots in between the left and center beads and the center and right beads. Row 28. Tie 10 square knots. This is the last row, row 29. Use the left cord as your filler cord and tie 19 double half hitch knots moving to the right. Use the right cord as your filler cord and tie 19 double half hitch knots moving to the left. Push your knots down your filler cord so that they sit tight and close to one another. This is the fun part because there are so many different options to finish off your tree. You can leave the string hanging, you can use a gathering knot to tie them all together, or a little of both. What I ended up doing was adding a bead to the 2 filler cords in the middle of my work, and then tying a gathering knot around the 14 middle cords and left the rest hanging. Please see the description for details on the length of each of the cords. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to see your work, so please feel free to tag me on Instagram or Facebook if you've used one of my tutorials. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up below, and if you think this tutorial might be useful for others, please feel free to share it. If you have any feedback, please feel free to leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly video tutorials. Thanks so much.